So when we think about community engagement in this setting, and this is something that I could see from your responses, you all really are grasping and know how to do. Well, we're thinking about that, finding out what families and students want and what's not available. I saw someone post what matters to you in a school. And then really connecting the dots to families between the district initiative and their wish list. So you told us you wanted this, and guess what? We're doing this. We're delivering on our promise to you. Or these are the reasons we couldn't deliver on that. And through doing that, you're really setting up your district and your school leader for those political and community engagement wins by making sure you're really highlighting the way that the school design matches your community asks. So you're seeding the ground and then using those little seeds that you gather to start really building out your plan. So you can become a district that folks can count on to deliver on promises and build that momentum by highlighting early wins. You know, you're looking for a college prep school. Guess what? We just picked this curriculum that has really rigorous standards. You're looking for a culture where your students feel really safe. Check out our new SEL program that will be at this new school. So along the way, before the action, during the action, and following up from the action, look what we've built for you. You're engaging the community by really hearing what they want. So we think that that happens in a couple of different ways. And so Alex is going to kind of walk you through some of the choice points.
Great. Thanks, Emily. Michael, we could go to the next slide. And I think what the rest of today's workshop is about is really the strategy that we think you can apply in order to best connect the dots between what you're hearing from community that they most importantly want and what it is that you're ultimately delivering to them and how you're communicating that connection. So it's, you know, there's so many factors that go into community engagement. We are going to narrow that down to 3 variables that we think you should consider when planning for this process. So the first is ask versus inform, more specifically, whether you want input, the ask, or whether you're planning to share decisions and you're informing folks. And then there's a host of things that go into support of either of those orientations. Second, the scope of what you plan to ask or inform from broad to narrow. And lastly, picking the topics or content that you're addressing through the community engagement process. So in the session, as I said, we're going to walk through each of these variables one by one, and we'll start at the top with ask versus inform. Mike, we can go to the next one. So asks, sorry, just get ready there. So the key decision of whether to ask or inform community will be influenced by a number of factors, but our critical guidance here, and this we'll keep repeating throughout this workshop, is that the process needs to be authentic. So just the same way students in a classroom can tell when a teacher is not being honest or truthful with them, it's our experience that community engagement is the same. So more specifically, don't ask for input unless you can deliver on the answers. We want this process to be real. So when you think about designing surveys or hosting working groups, you need to frame those interactions carefully, limiting choices to things you know to be good options to choose between and options you can provide. So I often like to describe this with a metaphor of or an analogy to a restaurant. So the district or yourselves, you're like a restaurant. The community are your customers, and you're giving them options, but they choose from the menu of what you're prepared to make. So you don't want your customers to come into your restaurant and just say, hey, what would you like for dinner? Oh, we don't serve that here. We don't make this, we don't make that. That just sets people up for disappointment, obviously. So we give them the menu. That menu is based hopefully on input that we've heard from them. They wanted to go to an Italian restaurant and we're serving Italian food here. And then they make their choice and we know we are prepared to make whatever it is that they ask for so everybody's happy. Michael, we can go on to the next slide. When you're informing community, as opposed to asking, it's critical that you link the content that you're sharing to the community wants and needs that have been shared with you previously. And so Emily already walked us through a few examples of those, but I think it's important here to think about the flexibility you have in delivering. So these community wants could be general. I want a good elementary school my child has access to. They could be more specific, something like I want a STEM themed pathway for my child to attend. Or they could get down to something very specific, like I need a school that runs until 5 p.m. so I can pick up my child after work. In general, you're looking to create statements that follow this basic flow. We heard from you that you want or need X, and so we're happy to announce that we've developed, are developing, or rolling out Y. And every time you make those connections, hopefully you have one to many happy community members. Michael, we can go on to the next.
Awesome. So we're about to look at some examples, and you're going to see examples of asking, and you're going to see examples of informing. And I think just to build on what Alex just said, even though in those inform examples, I think you will see how thoughtfully the communicators are engaging community by making those connections. So for example, you're going to see a principal introduction from the team at Aldine ISD, and I think Gabby's here on this call. And the way that they frame that informing the community about who the principal will be really connects to what the community wants in a principal. So they don't just say, oh, she's got a master's degree and oh, she's got this. They really talk about why she's connected to what the community has asked for. So in a second, I'm going to post this link and to the Padlet. And I'd love for you to just take some time on the Padlet. And if you haven't used it before, it's pretty intuitive. There's just tiles and you can click on them. And would love to have you click the heart if it seems like it really works for you, or comment if you see some good examples of asking and informing. So Michael, I think you can stop sharing for a second so that folks can see their Padlet. And just give me a heads up if you have any trouble accessing that Padlet. Take about 1 more minute to look at samples. And when you're ready and you want to come back over to the Zoom, I'd love to have you put into the chat an example you found and how it connected to this concept of ask, inform, or you said X, we delivered Y. So when you're ready, in the Zoom chat, post an example you thought exemplified what we're talking about. Thanks, Marshall. Our first poster, Brave Soul. Yeah, Dr. Rillo. Marshall, I love what you're saying here of people building their own why, and versus really making sure that we've got a coherent, uniform why so that everybody knows. I was just on the phone with a district that's opening or is jumping into the planning year, and they realized that they're opening a 612, but they hadn't really, as a senior leadership team, thought, but why 612? Why not? Why this new model? And until they got really clear, they weren't going to be able to compel the principals, the community, and the school. And so that piece around building our why is so critical. I think Dr. Roll is really building on that with students being at the center. Yeah, Dr. Rollo, Nick, do either of you want to put any words to your kind of both getting to this idea of centering on students. I also really loved the P-TECH graduate outcomes. They went and interviewed a cohort of nurses at the local hospitals and said, what do new nurses need to know and be able to do? And use that to build their graduate outcomes, which I thought was just such a unique way of asking. There's a unique part of our school design that only you know about. Yeah, Alyssa, thanks for adding that. Post-COVID, we get to actually go to other schools. It'd be so fun to see what students say they love about those schools. Yeah, agreed, Nick. So I think in all of these examples, we see that even when we're informing, we're still engaging community. It's not just a dry, here's this, the decision's made, it's over. We're still able to say, this is from you, this is of you, this is from students. And that's founded on being able to also ask, to being able to do those empathy interviews, do those surveys and those kinds of things, to be able to decide where you are in the asking and informing. So we're going to come out of this idea of ask and inform, and we're going to kind of go back into our 3 key tenets. So Michael, if you don't mind sharing our Zoom again, or sharing our slide again. And we'll just pop one forward.
Great. Thanks, Michael. So moving on to our second variable to consider here, broad versus narrow. And I think as you look at these 4 layers of the funnel, as we like to call it, or phases of the funnel, I think you can see how keeping these different phases in mind is, to me, the doorway to continuing to apply community engagement throughout the cycle, as we saw in the first slide, throughout the lever 1 cycle. So, you know, while generating options may be happening more in the earlier part of the phase, refining programming could certainly be happening after decisions are made as a way to continue to bring community into the process. So how to determine where you are in the funnel. This decision will be informed most importantly by where you are in the process. So to repeat what we said with the last variable, genuine engagement is critical. So if a decision has already been made, own it. Inform the community, don't fake ask them, and prepare to invite community in at the next level of the funnel. There's always room to engage, folks. The critical question we're always asking ourselves is, what can we authentically engage community in that we can actually deliver on? So let's consider an example together. And Michael, if we can go to the next slide. So in this slide, we're modeling 4 different levels of potential community engagement around the topic of principal selection. So level 1, generating options. This phase, we're just getting started. We haven't recruited principal candidates yet. And so we're open to hearing from folks what they're looking for in the principal of the new school, and we will use that information as we start to recruit potential candidates. Phase 2, we're ready to bring a select number of high quality candidates to be considered. And this is the most critical part, we would be okay with any choice that community pushes us towards. So don't put any like easy no's on the panel or as an option, thinking like, you know, well, that'll just round out the pool, because if community picks it and you don't go with it, that's going to be a political loss, of course. So again, don't ask for input unless you can deliver on whatever is asked for through the process. Then moving on to making decisions. So now we've selected a proposed principal candidate and we want community to have a chance to meet them and get on board with the decision. We'll only do this if we're prepared to find another principal if the community does not like this person. So I think this is probably a good idea to engage in even after the principal is picked, but timing is critical. I certainly wouldn't do this like 3 days before school starts to put yourself in a scramble or a hot seat. So, once we've selected a leader and we know this is the person who's going to be opening the school at the start of the year, they have the job, we're into phase 4, the decision's final. So now we want community to have access to the selected leader to share ideas, inform work at the school moving forward, but we're going to be clear about which elements, namely that the principal has been picked, are not up for grabs. So we're not just doing community engagement on principal selection here. We're being strategic about what we invite community to do, given where we are in the process and what we really want input on and what has been decided. So ideally, when you're thinking about or making a community engagement plan, as you think about each topic specifically, you can plan ahead enough to make all of these engagement opportunities available over the course of the process. Michael, we can go on to the next slide, and Emily, I'll turn it back to you to talk about the next variable.
Yeah, so kind of to what Alex was just alluding to, there's so many aspects of school design. You could engage your community in everything, and that might mean it takes 100 years to design your new school. But when you're thinking about it, you may be thinking about, well, what is most important to them? I was just on a call with a district that the PTA they want to talk about extracurriculars. They want to talk about extracurriculars. They want to talk about extracurriculars. They're not going to design a community engagement plan without a conversation about extracurriculars. And because it's so important, they're willing to start higher up that funnel to really make sure that that conversation's blown out. But this is a district that everybody knows each other. They've got a lot of great principals there. And so there's a lot of trust from the community in the principals that the school district selects. And so they don't feel that they need to, in terms of content, really give a lot of engagement around who the principal of the new school is going to be. And they can start much further down on the funnel. They can give those couple of community members who are always going to want to be a part of a conversation the opportunity, but they don't have to start at the top of that funnel. And so when you think about the content, when you think about all the decisions you're going to have to make, what is the curriculum you're going to choose? What are the social emotional programs you're going to offer? What is the behavior management system? What extracurriculars will be offered? What courses will be offered? What's the length of the school day? What's the bell schedule? There's a million. And districts that are finding a lot of success here are picking and choosing from all of those where in the funnel they want to start and whether they're asking or informing versus based on what's authentic to them. And so you may be in a place when some content that you're asking for input on areas you can deliver on, big picture things. That's okay, Michael, you can go ahead. Or narrowing it down. And so you might be asking about themes. You might be asking about points of emphasis. You might be asking about choosing the leader. You might be asking about the schedule. But overall, if there's a place where you want to maintain tight control, you're going to want to start lower on the funnel and be heavier on the informed side, which doesn't mean you aren't using those engagement tools, but you're more of the informed side because you're maintaining that control. So from here, we wanted to give you all some time to do a little bit of planning. And so we're going to post.
Yeah, you know what, actually, before we go on to the next slide, I just want to sort of underscore that last point that you just made and say, in my experience, a critical mistake that some districts make is thinking that sort of more community engagement is always better. And I think it's really important to recognize areas where I think we may be doing a disservice to our field, to ourselves, to the professional expertise that should drive a lot of decisions around school design and school implementation. And so there are ways and places that we're strategically looking for the critical input from families and kids about what they want and or what's most important to them. But, you know, I've seen districts where they ask community to design everything and sometimes have to undo some decisions that we know are not aligned with best practice based on our own professional expertise. So I think this last bullet here and this question of like what topics you're going to pick and where to go in the funnel with them, as Emily just said, critical to your community engagement feeling successful for everyone at the end of the day. So sorry I cut you off, Emily, but I know we were.
No, that's perfect.
Yeah.
You're actually taking us into some workshop time.
Yeah. So Michael, we can go to the next slide. And so we were going to give everybody, we were thinking 10 minutes, but it looks like we could do 10 to 15, and that should give us a little bit of time at the end for some share out. So just to review again, there are 3 variables you're considering when you're planning a community engagement action, I guess we could call it. So first, pick your topic, and we have this short list here under 1A, and we can put this slide back up while you're in workshop time in case it's helpful. And then, you know, these next 2 questions, I don't think have a particular order. I would sort of think about them simultaneously when designing. So where are you in the funnel? If you're asking, how broad do you want to be? How specific based on where you are in the process? And if you're informing, what funnel phase did you make decisions about? Who's your primary audience? What do they care about? What do you need to tell them about? So on your worksheet, and ESK, does everyone have the worksheet already? Sorry, I'm not clear on that. Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
Great. So if you all click on the link in the chat, you'll see that on your worksheet, there's space at the top just to do a quick brainstorm of a series of topics that you're planning to engage community on. And again, like if you want to copy this short list, that's fine. And then once you've made your list of topics, pick one, and you're going to segue to the chart below on your worksheet, which looks like this. And you can go to the next slide now, Michael. So this chart is intended to represent the crosswalk of the 3 variables. So the content that you're going to ask community to provide input on, or that you're informing community about, is what you're going to fill in the blank boxes. Ask or inform variable is the 2 different columns that you have in the worksheet. And then the funnel phase determines the row that you're going to fill things in. So I'm sure this is a little confusing. So I have an example to go through. And Michael, we can go to the next slide. So this example is a forced choice decision posed to community. And we're at the evaluate options because we're confident that both of these choices support the community desire for a STEAM-based school. So I'm making up the scenario right now, although it's a real one, or referencing a real scenario. And critically, we know we could deliver a high quality course of study in either coding or engineering. So we're okay with really opening it up to the community to evaluate options. And therefore, we're okay to present this as an ask because we're sure we can deliver regardless of the answer. Okay, we can go to the next slide and to look at a different example. So this example is that make decisions and the inform side of things. And the example here is about informing parents or families about a design decision for the new school based on feedback we received from an interest survey regarding what's most important to families that the new school provide. So the top choice or the most important factor was preparing students for viable job opportunities post-graduation. So that's pretty general. But you can see how the wording of the content in this box links the decision made to information that was collected in this earlier engagement, right? So we're not just saying, okay, we're creating a school to provide viable job opportunities, but we're offering a sequence of coding courses, and you would go on to follow up with research and data that shows the job opportunities in the area encoding, so on and so forth. So a quick review of what to do with the worksheet before we cut you loose. So quick brainstorm on content that you'll fill out at the top of the sheet. Then pick one of the topics to engage community on. Determine the right funnel phase based on where you are in the process. And then determine if you're going to ask or inform community. And then take a stab at filling in the box with what you will specifically say to or ask of community. And 10 minutes from now, I think we will hopefully be able to ask a few people to share out what it is you've written, and hopefully we can learn from each other's work here. If anyone,
if you would like to go to a breakout room, so Dr. Rollo and Doyle and Ken, if you all want to go to a breakout room, I'm happy to create some breakout rooms for people to be with their teammates in. Otherwise, we'll just play a little bit of soft thinking music and give you a little time to think and work. So just holler out or chat me. Great. Brian, Ken, and Maya. Okay.
Yes, Kay, I have it up. The breakout's up right here. Do you want to do it instead?
Yeah, somehow Genius made me a co-host, so I am totally capable of sending people to rooms.
Great.
Maya. Brian, when you say Ken, you mean Mr. Caceres?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, great.